All right, y'all, welcome to the show. So today, Biden's favorite TV show. We're going to talk about that and what it says about him and his ideology and his presidency. I'll get deep on that one. Then we're going to get to Michael Rappaport. He's doing his whole, why I left the left shtick now. He's lost his goddamn mind because he's an ultra-Zionist. And then now he's leaning into it. Maybe I'm going to vote for Trump. Maybe I don't vote for Trump. So we'll talk about that. Then later on in the show, we have a new Biden strategy moving forward. And it's going to be to unleash fire and fury on his left flank. He's apparently going to do a scorched earth campaign against the likes of Jill Stein and Cornel West. And he's also going to attack the centrist RFK. So we got a lot to say on that one. Trump throws Bibi under the bus. That's fun. And then later on, probably the single most based thing I've ever seen a governor do. You're not going to want to miss this story. The Connecticut governor single-handedly proved that good things are possible. And when good things don't happen, it is a choice. It is a choice of corrupt politicians. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into it here. So Axios came out with a report the other day that says Joe Biden is obsessed with Morning Joe, the MSNBC show Morning Joe. For those of you who don't know, which I'm sure like 95% of my audience does know, Joe Scarborough is a former Republican congressman. And then ever since he, started his MSNBC show, which has been going on for a while now, he's sort of leaned into this idea that he's the ultimate centrist, registered Republican or right-wing Democrat now is probably a better way to describe him. He's a big defender of the corporate Democrats in the Democratic Party. And so Joe Biden listening to and respecting and being obsessed with this show is just chef's kiss, too perfect. It's so on brand. So here's what they say. When White House aides appear on MSNBC's Morning Joe, they're often booked between 7 and 7:40 a.m. Eastern Time. That's so they'll reach one crucial and loyal viewer, President Biden. Biden's years-long love of MSNBC's staple morning show affects how the White House runs and who Biden listens to. That's a terrifying thought, that Morning Joe is controlling policy in a similar way that when Trump was president, he would listen to every word Sean Hannity said. And in fact, he would call Sean Hannity and get advice. And so Sean Hannity was steering the national agenda a lot of the time during the Trump years. Now it's apparently Joe Scarborough steering the agenda during the Biden years. The president often calls co-host Joe Scarborough, a former Republican congressman who's now a harsh critic of Donald Trump, to get Scarborough's take on issues and sometimes vent about media coverage, according to people familiar with the relationship. Now, by the way, there's been some eyebrow-raising moments on Morning Joe where Joe Scarborough will go above and beyond to defend Joe Biden in a way that I thought was really weird and unique. Like, for example, whenever, people bring up Biden's definitely lost a step. He looks really old. Sometimes he can't finish his sentences coherently. These are things that everybody acknowledges, except one guy, Joe Scarborough. He's gone to bat saying no, that's not true at all. And Trump's actually the only one who has problems here. And now a lot of that is probably because they literally talk on the phone. So that's his boy. That's his friend. He's going the extra mile. If he wasn't friends with Joe Biden and didn't know Joe Biden watches his show all the time, he probably would say the obvious thing that everybody knows, which is, he's lost multiple steps, not just one step. During the day, Biden has long asked his staff whether they saw a story, a poll, or a segment that had been on the show. He's included show regulars in off-the-record conversations with policy experts. Biden pays particular attention to and has consulted with Morning Joe regulars such as longtime reporter Mike Barnicle, foreign policy expert Richard Haass, and historian John Meacham, who has assisted on several Biden speeches. Vice President Kamala Harris watches Morning Joe too. She and second gentleman Doug Emhoff hosted a dinner last month at the vice presidential residence for Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, his co-host and wife. Aides have noticed that Harris also tunes into Fox News and occasionally watches The Five. Wow, don't do that, Kamala. Don't do that. Some aides have felt that Fox News' relentless negative coverage, first casting her as Biden's all-powerful puppeteer, then later portraying her as incompetent, can drive Harris to distraction. Quote, it got in her head and caused high anxiety because they were constantly hammering her. One former Harris aide told Axios. Yeah, but that's okay. It's like when you put your hand on a hot stove and you don't like the way it feels and it burns, and then you do it again like a week later. Like, why the hell are you watching a show full of colossal partisan hacks whose whole existence is just to hammer you into submission? That doesn't make any sense at all. But that's what Kamala Harris was doing. I don't know. These people, man, it really is DC. It really is this little incestuous bubble of elitism. And these are the people, you're getting your policy advice from Morning Joe, and you're watching The Five to see the 17 ways in which they shit on you. It just doesn't make any sense. Because Biden watches Morning Joe so often, most of his top aides watch or track the show to anticipate potential questions from him. Jesus Christ, that's so embarrassing. Biden aides have remarked how longtime Biden aide Steve Ricchetti seems to watch much of the 4-hour show every morning. He and other aides often reference the show. Oh, this is so sad. A White House official told Axios that many of Biden's top staff members think the show gives Biden a fairer shake on issues than other news shows and media outlets. Guys, all Morning Joe is a conventional wisdom factory. It's a conventional wisdom factory with a enlightened, centrist, right-wing Democrat. Like, it is not a good place to go to try to make decisions that impact the country. It's a bunch of out-of-touch, elitist pricks who, who have no idea what Americans want, what would help the country. In fact, more on that in a minute. In the first months of 2021, Brzezinski requested an interview with Harris as part of the launch of Forbes 50 over 50 list. Harris was wary, but ultimately agreed after Biden aides made it clear they wanted the new vice president to do it. The West Wing stepped in and insisted she do it because of how important the relationship is for them. That's insane, man. That's insane. Biden consults widely with Morning Joe contributors. The president has included retired Admiral James Stavridis, a Morning Joe staple on national security issues, in an off-the-record briefing at the White House with other experts. Biden takes notes and initially refrains from giving his perspective during such sessions because he doesn't want people to tell him what he wants to hear, according to a person familiar with the meeting. All right, anyway, this goes on. Apparently, he also is a big fan of Fareed Zakaria's show. I will take being a fan of Zakaria over being a fan of Morning Joe. Zakaria is way more intelligent. So he should just watch that show, if anything. But look, it goes to show you that, like, all these people who are in these massive positions of power and privilege, they're just regular fucking people. They're just regular people. In the same way that you might watch my show. You know, you watching this might watch my show, a couple of videos a day or whatever, and you get some information and news from here, and that helps inform your worldview or whatever. Trump is doing that, but he's doing it with Sean Hannity. And Biden's doing that, but he's doing it with Morning Joe. And, like, the thing that's so disturbing is that, again, these people are fucking idiots. I'm sorry, but it's true. They're just idiots. Do you think you're going to get a real detailed picture of, for example, what's going on in Gaza by watching Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough, and Mika Brzezinski? I mean, come on, man. Come on. It's embarrassing. So they also go on to point out that, Barack Obama was a big fan of The New Yorker and The Atlantic and those sort of, like, liberal elite magazines. And you could see the worldview of these people really reflects what their viewing choices are when it comes to political news. So now I tell you all of that to then show you this, because this is a big deal and this just happened. So we all know that recently there were over 150 attacks on U.S. bases in the Middle East. Various Shia militias are attacking U.S. bases. And for a while, there was nobody injured, nobody hurt, but just recently, 3 Americans died in these attacks. It was a Jordanian base. It was a U.S. base in Jordan near the Syria border. There was an attack from a Shia militia. 3 Americans died. Many more were injured. And then this led to cries far and wide of, oh my God, Biden should go bomb Iran and start another giant war in the Middle East. Now, nobody brings up, hey, how do we get to this point? Well, it literally all stems back to the U.S. backing, arming, funding Netanyahu as he does a genocide in Gaza. Nobody brings that up. Hey, maybe if you stop that, then we wouldn't get attacked. Nobody brings that up, even though that's clearly the correct answer. Well, here's a back and forth that happened on Morning Joe that is going to help reflect why Biden made the decision he made and how to respond to that. Watch this.
This is about deterrence, Richard. What have we done to deter Iran from killing 3 more Americans tonight?
One thing I would do is
what have we done?
What happened? No, we haven't. What have we done to deter Iran from doing that?
From doing it again tonight?
We've not.
Why don't we go on the ship that Iran has, the spy ship? Why don't we board it, strip it of all of its intel information, as James Trevita said, and then sink it, bury it at the bottom of the Red Sea, and say, come after us again, things will get worse.
That's okay. That's different than attacking Iran itself. Let's do this.
So it's okay sinking their ship.
Let's think about measured escalation. So let's go after let's first of all go after Iranian proxies, much more than we have. Let's go after Iranian troops in places like Syria or Iraq. We could go after specific Iranian vessels. What I'm saying, let's do a lot of things, Joe, before we do a direct war against Iran proper. And the oil situation, if you want to go after that, do you necessarily want to do that to oil markets? You may decide it's important enough and necessary. All I'm saying is we have got to think this through. It's the day after and the day after the day after.
So to recap what you just saw there, Joe Scarborough was taking the classic position that was all over conventional wisdom spewing mainstream media. We got to fight back. We got to attack. We got to show we're not weak. We got to show we're not pussies. We are not bitches. We're going to attack Iran. Yes, sink their ship. Yes. So that's what Joe Scarborough is arguing for. And this dude right here, who is actually referenced in the article, Richard Haass, president of the Council on Foreign Relations. This guy chimes in to try to talk Joe Scarborough down off the ledge. He's like, look, okay, I understand where that instinct comes from, but you got to realize if you start a proper war with Iran, it's going to be way bigger and way worse than the war in Iraq. It would be a massive, massive issue. It would affect global oil markets, to say the least. It would affect much more than just that. Never mind the human toll, all that stuff. And he's like, look, I agree, we need to retaliate, but what we should do is really rain hell down on the Shia militias that are Iran's proxies in the region. That's what this guy says. So what did Joe Biden end up doing? Exactly what Haass said here. Exactly what he said. He said, don't do a full-scale war with Iran, but attack their proxies, all these Shia militias in Iraq and Syria, etc. And that is exactly what Biden did. Killed at least 39, injured many more. It was like 85 different strikes. So it is possible, if not likely, that Biden's final decision came from watching this segment. Now imagine, just imagine, instead of having Richard Haass on this day, John Bolton was on Morning Joe, or Bill Kristol, or some other neocon warmonger. And Joe Scarborough comes out and says exactly what he says here, like a bat out of hell. We got revenge, strike back, war with Iran. And then the guest is like, absolutely, everybody agrees with that. You should go start a war with Iran. What would Biden have done? Would that have swayed him to bomb Tehran and start another giant war in the Middle East that would dwarf the Iraq war? Did we happen to get lucky that there was one person on the panel who was urging restraint to some extent, which, by the way, let's also point out this irony, that like, the spectrum of debate that's allowed is either all-out war with Iran or the liberal position, the less hawkish position is just bomb all the militias in the region. Literally nobody's saying, let's take a page out of Ronald Reagan's book and cut and run and get the fuck out of there. The only reason we're getting attacked is because we're allies with Israel and we're arming them as they massacre innocent civilians in Palestine. That's not even in the conversation. It's not even in the conversation to stop Israel from doing their massacre and stop arming them, which would then in turn make it so we're not getting attacked. That's not even allowed in the conversation. The more liberal position is just bomb the Shia militias. Imagine if somebody else was on that panel who agreed with Joe Scarborough and you had unanimous agreement on the panel. Well, obviously, we got to start war with Iran. We got to show them who's boss. Look what they just did. We very well could be in another war with Iran. It reminds me of, was it Iran or Syria? I think it was Iran. Tucker Carlson did some big segment about how Trump shouldn't go do all-out war with Iran. And that may have prevented him from bombing Tehran, doing an all-out war. He did attack General Soleimani, which had massive consequences and a giant backlash. That was illegal. That was unconstitutional. It's a top Iranian commander who was fighting ISIS in the field. He did bomb him. But perhaps Trump stopped short of a total war simply because Tucker Carlson was like, that's a bad idea. And here Biden may have stopped short of a total war because this guy, Richard Haass, was like, that's a bad idea. Again, I don't think people truly understand how close we are to absolute disaster. I mean, we're already there in many respects. Look at what's happening in Gaza, right? Look at what's happening with the Houthis. But just from watching this conventional wisdom factory, Lord only knows what other horrible decisions Biden's going to make. Lord only knows. Because I'll tell you what, he's certainly acting like he doesn't even realize he's down as big as he is in this election. down in the average of polls to Trump nationally like 2 or 3 points, down in every single swing state. One poll had his approval rating at 33%. He's hemorrhaging young people, hemorrhaging Arab Americans and Muslim Americans and Hispanics. He's acting like why? Well, one of the reasons is he's watching a show like Morning Joe, and Morning Joe would never come out and say, hey, here's a good idea if you want to win re-election, wipe out everybody's medical debt. Hey, here's a good idea, do paid family leave. Hey, here's a good idea, do a public option. Give people health care. Here's a good idea, cut another stimulus check to people so that they are doing better off financially. Because right now the markets may be doing good, inflation may be going down, but all of the pandemic-era social safety net programs, they were expanded, now they're not. And now people are struggling at the bottom of the economic ladder, so help them out. You're not going to hear that on Morning Joe. And that helps, it shows you why he's making a lot of the decisions he's making, because apparently he's obsessed with the show. So there you have it. I mean, it says a lot. It says a lot that this is the show he's listening to. And now it's like you got to keep your eye on that show, because it's very likely whatever they end up saying is whatever he ends up doing. And that's not a good place to be, because they are more often wrong than they are right. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.